Hello, hello.
Hey, welcome.
Welcome to another episode of High Heels Happy Hour. I'm Christina,
And I'm Ingrid.
and we're still BFFs.
Yes, still, right?
You know, a lot can happen. But yeah, and if you are new to this podcast, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. We appreciate you. And yeah, today we have a really awesome guest. But before we get into that, let's do a check-in. How was your week?
My week was great. It was actually uneventful, so I kind of don't have anything that.
Well, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, it feels a little weird. Usually I have a lot to say. No, it's super easy, uneventful.
Nice.
Victor was traveling, so everything ran smoothly. The house is still standing.
That's nice.
So
that's great.
That's great. How about you?
It was fairly uneventful, but it was. We had a volleyball weekend, so we're now immersed in volleyball. My daughter Bella our daughter Bella plays volleyball. She's mine, but also her dad's. And volleyball, if you are not familiar with the world of volleyball, because it's fairly new to us, it's intense. I've never been in a louder sports event ever. But it's kind of fun because it's very action packed. It's not like sitting around and between, but there's constantly action, so it's fun. It was fun. Yeah,
I love volleyball.
That's yeah. I had no idea about anything about volleyball. I didn't even know what you counted to the first time. So, do we have a life hack that we'd like to share?
I do. So, you ready?
I am.
So if you want to get a grease stain off your clothes, you rub some chalk on it into the affected area and then throw it in the wash.
Well, I guess that makes sense because it absorbs. Yeah, because that's why you use it not to get sweaty hands. Had not tried that. I thought I knew everything about fabrics and okay.
Up until now, you did not know that.
Until now. Okay.
So what's yours?
Mine. Okay, so this one is a acquired taste, but it's something that I love. So I know you hate it. My husband hates it.
I didn't hate it. It just it like burned my palate.
You know, we talk about we do intermittent fasting, and we started drinking black coffee, which was I never thought I could do. And I do enjoy it, but I like things that are salty. So someone said, well, you should put a little salt, like a little Himalayan salt in your coffee. And I thought, I did. I love it. So to the point where when I bought a Starbucks and I asked for salt and they saw me put it in there, I think I stummed them a little. They were like, what is she? Does she know that's not sugar? But no, I love it. So if you do like salty things, I think you should try salt in your coffee. It brings out the flavor. Takes away a little bit of the bitterness. I love it. Anyway, not for everyone, but definitely for me.
No, it almost made me stop drinking coffee permanently.
Oh, well, there you go. It's a hit or miss.
I was like, oh gosh. I was like, what is this? But that's why they make.
You could try, and then you can say if you're Christina or an Ingrid. If you're Christina, you like it. If you're an Ingrid, you don't. There you go. So now. We are soon going to introduce you to our guest. Today, we're going to talk about communication, speaking, and stages. And that might scare some of us just hearing the word stages. But our guest today will totally explain it all, walk us through it, and see as entrepreneurs how we really should leverage stages into our business. So let me just read you a little bit about our fabulous guest, Heather Sager. So Heather helps online entrepreneurs become the go-to authority in their industry by confidently nailing their message on live and virtual stages. She's a coach, speaker, trainer, and host of the top-rated podcast, Hint of Hustle, which is a great podcast. So I highly recommend it. Heather's spoken on stages around the world and personally trained hundreds of 6- and 7-figure business owners on leadership, sales, and communication. Along the way, she learned that success is limited by your ability to articulate a vision and inspire others to take action. So, without any further ado, let's welcome my friend Heather Sager.
Hello, ladies.
Hi, welcome to High Heels.
Thank you. I feel like I should have put on heels, but I am in my standard virtual speaking thing, which means I'm wearing yoga pants and socks.
Well, there you go. And we're barefoot over here too. So one day we'll do a full body episode where we'll wear shoes.
Yes.
But
up until then.
Yeah, up until. So, and for those that's not in your bio, that I just want to add, because I've had the pleasure of meeting Heather and talking to you, connecting with you, and being on your podcast. But I think you are one of the most real people out there. I mean, you tell it like it is, and I love that in your podcast that you're open and raw, and there's no sugarcoating, and I love that. So
Thank you so much. I pride myself on my ability to share hard things and keep it real with people. It's kind of what I do, but it wasn't always that way.
yeah, no, that takes guts, but it also shows who you are as a person, and you are very real. And Heather and I met in on a, I think it was a blue velvet sofa in New York. That sounds so sexy when I say that. Yeah, it was through at a kind of conference media event that we went to, and we sat next to each other on this velvet sofa and solved the world problems. So there you go.
Yeah, that's what we did.
So tell us, Heather, stages. The word stages and stages in our business for many people will be, oh my God, I hate speaking in front of people. Like, how do you want to kind of take the drama out?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, we have to talk about what a stage is because everybody has a different picture in their mind. Most people, when they think stage, they envision Mel Robbins or Tony Robbins, right? Somebody in this giant arena with this huge stage, with this huge auditorium, or they're picturing a boring conference that they went to somewhere in their career and there's a keynote speaker on stage that may or may not be good. Most people, when they think stage, they think a raised platform in a large setting with hundreds or thousands of people. And while that is a stage, what I have found in my career and now as a business owner working with leaders and entrepreneurs, a stage is simply a platform to share your message. Whether that's a live stream, being on a podcast like I am right now, you going live on Instagram, talking to your friends and family, you being on a Zoom call with a prospect or a colleague, you showing up to a business networking event, speaking at a conference or in a breakout, teaching a workshop. There are so many. I could probably fill the entire episode coming up with examples. But for me, it was very, very clear in the pandemic when I was a speaking coach teaching people how to speak on traditional stages and the entire world closed those stages. It was a really beautiful seamless shift for me because I've been using any kind of stage my entire career to help people or help share ideas, share my thoughts on in a way that connects with other people. So I was able to pivot that very quickly because a stage is simply a platform to share your message.
That's right. I love that. Remember that. Simply a platform to share your message. And of course, there are you can create your own stages like a podcast or live, but you can also take advantage of. I learned the word OPS. Other
Yeah.
people's
Yeah.
OPS. How many OPSs do you want to be on? But really, because just like having a podcast like this, we always look for interesting speakers and guests to have on. And there's so many of that out there that I think as business owners, we really need to take advantage of that more. And also in networking situations, don't you agree that often we see people love the networking, but they're not really prepared to share when it's the 30-second share moment or something? That's when they get stuck, and it's such a lost opportunity, right?
Yeah. where they wing it and talk about what's top of mind. I think a lot of times, especially people are pretty seasoned in their expertise. When they show up at networking events, a lot of people are just kind of thinking what's top of mind to me. So when they start talking to someone, they're kind of winging it and speaking haphazardly, which if you're a comfortable communicator, you can get away with that. But what I find, what I teach people to do is leverage speaking as a marketing tool to grow their personal brand and their business brand and be more effective in what they do, whether they're self-employed or employed by others. But when you are just reacting and just going with the flow and winging it, you don't really realize your objectives. So really thinking and being thoughtful, even at simple networking around how you introduce yourself, what your lead in, great example for me, helping people understand what a stage is out of the get-go. That is very intentional. So that way I don't miss the opportunity to open people's eyes around the value I can bring talking about speaking, because at first glance, a lot of people just roll their eyes going, I'm not there yet. That's not for me. So I
Yeah.
have to be very intentional with how I start my conversations to be able to broaden the thinking and invite more people into the conversation.
Yeah. No, that's
I like that.
so true. So would you have any tips on if people say, well, that sounds great, but how do I get on stages or other people's stages? Are there any tips that you can give
Yeah.
coming up with yeah.
I have all of the tips today. I brought like a power list of all the
Love
things.
Yeah,
So
and-
here's the first thing before we talk about how to go out and find stages. The number one thing I do with all of my clients inside my programs or one on one, I always ask the big fat elephant in the room question, and it's the why. Why do you want to be on stages in the first place? What is your goal? Because a lot of people have the idea like, oh, if I'm on stage, people will listen to me. Oh, if I'm on stage, that'll mean that I'm a credible authority. Oh, I'm an expert. And what I challenge people to think about is when you speak as as a business owner or as a professional, as an employee, what you want to think about is speaking again is as a tool to be able to reach more people and make a bigger impact. And what we have to do is we have to prioritize impact and purpose over popularity. So it's not about just being that person on stage, it's what you do with the microphone. So the very first thing I would tell anyone who's thinking about doing more public speaking or more virtual speaking is make sure that you have a really clear reason for it. There are 4 specific reasons that I recommend that professionals and business owners leverage speaking. One of them is if you want to make money, that's great. Like that might be your goal to become paid. I don't really teach people how to become professional speakers. We talk about it, but the other 3 is really what I support people with. Number 1, it's the how do you position yourself as more of a credible authority. So number 1 strategy is building your authority. And the advantage of doing that is when you're seen more as an authority, you can be more selective with who you work with and you can charge higher fees. Also, when you're an employee in another company, you get paid better when you are more articulate and you can be seen as that face of your department or of your company. So that's a pretty good thing. So growing your authority, that might be the reason why you want to be more visible on stages.
Yeah.
Number 2 would be growing your network. If you're a business owner, it would be growing your audience specifically. So you're doing it to be able to reach more people and grow your audience or your professional network to open the door for future opportunities. And the third reason you might be doing it is, especially if you're a business owner, is you're doing it to make money in other ways off stage. So specifically, let's say you're a consultant or a coach or you provide services, you're wanting to leverage stages to get in front of more of your ideal clients to make money. Now, even if you're not a business owner, I know back when I was in corporate doing a lot of speaking was indirectly impacting our sales because the more I was on stage in front of our potential clients, the more our clients would work with us and spend more money with our organization. So even if you're not the actual business owner, you still might be impacted by number 3. So the first thing I would do is get really clear around what is the purpose of you being on stage. And then what that will do is help you get clarity of what types of stages you should be on.
So good. I love that. And again, we can take that back to a 30-second networking introduction. Like why or what is it you want to say with your 30-second, not just ramble what you do and your title. So I think that's great. Really knowing why we're there, why we want to speak. Awesome. Love it. Anything else you want to add to that, or any other tips to
Yeah.
yes.
We can talk about a quick way. So if answering your original question is okay, so okay, say we know why. Now we're maybe saying I want to be on stages because I want to increase my visibility or my authority in my industry. So the question is, how do I get on stages? There's this kind of myth that happens of people think that there's some secret network of stages out there, specifically people who are
Wouldn't that
thinking, I
be
want to
great?
speak at conferences. Yeah. Are you pointing? You're going, yeah, what's the speaker circuit? I hear this all the time. The speaker circuit, it's just the speaking industry. It's just people who professionally speak. There is no like secret underground ring of professional conferences. There are speakers bureaus, there are places that you can go and find different conferences, but quite frankly, let's just make it easier on ourselves. If a stage is simply a platform to share your message, Christina, as you said, you have your own stages and you have other people's stages. So if we use that as a filter, the question is, if you want to grow your authority and get on stages, the fastest way to do that is to build your own stage.
Mhm.
Whether that's a podcast, speaking on YouTube, going live on social, hosting a Zoom workshop on your own. Those are all ways you don't need anyone's permission to that. You just need access to a free software. Go. But if
Yeah.
you want to get on other people's stages, which is, I think, what you're asking, you can start with your own existing network because a lot of the people that are in your network professionally probably have their own stage or they work for a company that welcomes guest speakers all the time. So I like to think a great starting point for speaking is one, either podcasts or live streams or inside organizations. And typically you can find those by tapping into your network. And a very simple way to do that is to do a strategy that I call an adjacent pitch. Listen up, you're going to all be like, "Oh, this is so simple, but also so easy to do." The thing that people really get weird about when they think about asking someone else to come in and speak on their stage or in their organization, people hate rejection. So let's say, for example, Ingrid and Christina, let's say I pitched you. I said, hey, y'all have a podcast. Can I come speak? And let's just pretend for a moment that maybe I wasn't an experienced speaker, or maybe we didn't know each other and you two were very selective, which you are, right, of your guests you bring on the show. If I would pitch you and you knew nothing about me, even if I was super awesome, if you were to reject me and say no, you probably would kind of feel bad about it, or you wouldn't even reply, you'd ghost me because you don't want to make me feel bad. And then I would be like, am I terrible? Like, they don't like me? What? It just creates awkwardness for all. So the reason why a lot of people hate pitching is one, they don't know how to do it, and two, they fear rejection. So I say, let's just eliminate the awkward out of it for everyone involved and do something called the adjacent pitch, which is instead of coming at you two saying, hey, can I be on your podcast? I reach out to you, you're in my network, and I say, hey, I've been doing a lot of speaking lately on this concept of stages not being just conferences, but we speak on stages all the time. Do you know of anyone who has a platform that would value or for benefit from hearing this message? And I ask you if you know a guy. And what you do is you raise your hand and be like, oh my gosh, we would love to have you on the podcast. So I give you the chance to be the hero and scoop me up, or I give you the chance to bow out gracefully without feeling bad for rejecting me. And for me, if you say no, my ego's not hurting because you could graciously say, oh my gosh, how exciting for you. That's amazing. I'll keep you in mind if I think of anyone. It's
That's
gracious all around. It's so perfect because it's like people hate conflict. You avoid all the conflict and make everyone feel good about it. And the people that you want to network with, they'll most likely say yes, or they might know someone. Like it might be a win-win all around. So set yourself up to
Yeah.
not be rejected harshly.
Yeah.
my
I love
okay.
that.
That will be used. The adjacent pitch. Well, I've been on your podcast, but I might just
Yeah, and you can use this in LinkedIn. So people are like, okay, that's great for podcasts, but I don't know anyone who has a podcast. Great. Do you know people in organizations who do lunch and learns? Those are simply put, they're people bring in guest speakers to come in and do free networks, free workshopping, things for their employees. Organizations are looking for people to come in and love up on their people and give them additional tools. organizations are looking for ways to add value to their employees because they're having a hard time keeping employees. So they're looking for guest speakers, and most organizations have a budget for those guest speakers. So you can apply the thing that I just said. You can do that on a LinkedIn message. Look at your network right now and say who's in organizations, and you don't have to pitch them. You adjacent pitch. Hey, I have this great thing. Focus on the benefit of what you teach. Talk to them about it and ask them if they know someone.
That is so good.
Yeah, it really is. It's not earth-shattering, right? It's so simple, but
A
it's
little bit
the
it is.
simplicity.
I mean, the simplicity of it, but it's
Call me old-fashioned, but where this came from is, so when I worked in corporate, I was the vice president of learning development for a very large organization in the medical space, and we would bring in speakers and guests all the time into our organization. And I had to reject a lot of people. And I can tell you, I feel bad. One, I wouldn't reply to some people because it's just so much rejection, right? But what I loved is where I learned this is I loved it when people would give me the opportunity to reject them gracefully. And I'm like, that just feels so much better. And it felt better for them too, I assume. So that was a lesson learned on the other side, booking speakers. It was really wonderful when people gave me the opportunity to still be their champion by saying, it's not a fit for me, but I'll keep you in mind for someone else. So this is my standard approach when I pitch.
I love that. Yeah.
That was so good. So we'll see now. With our friends, we'll notice who has listened to this episode because
you're going to probably get a lot of requests from people of, do you know someone?
So I listened to your podcast, and you have such great ideas and tips on, since you are a speaking coach from the beginning. Any little tips, or that, it's not a full episode, because I think we could do a 3-part episode on just that, but any missed opportunities or issues you see us entrepreneurs do when we're asking for the stage, or show up on the stage.
For when they're pitching opportunities, or when they're speaking on opportunities, which you tell me which angle. We can go both.
Let's do both.
So here's the interesting part. Now that I say that, the mistake is actually very similar with both, so we can come at it from 2 angles. So a big mistake that entrepreneurs make, it, I would even argue back when I was in corporate as a professionals do this too. Have you ever heard of this concept, the curse of knowledge? One of my friends introduced me. I'd heard of the concept, but I didn't realize this was a thing. So forgive me, I do not know who came up with it. So Google the curse of knowledge is a very popular phrase. The curse of knowledge stands for this idea that as experts, have you ever heard this idea that we're way too close to our genius to be able to acknowledge it and explain it to other people? And what actually happens is, so this concept of the curse of knowledge is our brains, when we learn something, right? There's this whole thing that happens neurologically in our brain where we fire out these different pathways. And when you're starting to do something new, it's really like the little brain neuron thingies. They're like all these little freeways and connections are happening. But the more and more you do something, your brain actually rewires and it creates shortcuts. So when you become an expert, you actually don't even remember those early steps that you took because your brain has rewired to shortcut it. So what happens for experts when you go to pitch is you actually speak from your topic like 3 miles into the topic itself, whereas most of your audience members they're at the very early stage beginning. And so how we're speaking about our expertise is actually coming from an angle that people are not ready to hear yet because they're still 3 miles back on the freeway. So what we have to think about when we're pitching, but also when we're speaking to audiences, is how do we put ourselves in the perspective of somebody who is new to our topic? And this is especially challenging for experts because we don't have a lot of tolerance for BS fluff. And we really hate it when people get up and talk about just a lot of like raw, very obvious things. And we don't have tolerance for it. So we really want our presentations and what we speak about to be tactical, to be tangible, and value-based. These are all things I hear all the time from my clients. And so, in an effort to be more tactical and tangible, we speak at things from the expert angle. And while our audience can say things like, wow, that's so interesting. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. What happens is they walk away and they still don't take action because they see it from 3 miles back. They're appreciating you in your expert lane, but they don't actually feel like it's relevant for them right now. So when we think about pitching and we think about speaking, our responsibility, especially as a business owner, is we have to learn how to communicate about our expertise and our topic in the language of our prospects. And that is very different than speaking as an expert or a trainer. You have to think about what is the messaging. Sorry if you don't love this, but you have to learn how to speak like a marketer. And I don't mean as like a schmucky, sham wow in your face type thing. I mean, a marketer is how do you make this relevant and appetizing for someone who truly needs what you do? So you can't talk about an expert speak. You can't talk about in jargon. You can't talk about at even a 201 level. You have to figure out how do you speak to it in language that people will hear, they will understand, and they will believe that, okay, this is for me. Now what do I do?
So brilliant. Yeah, that's
I
true.
love that.
Because we think we won't be taken serious if we don't sound like we got it
All squared away.
all squared. Yeah, so true. I've been I'm guilty of that, I'm sure. One thing you've talked about too in one of your episodes that I listened to recently was, which I thought too makes so much sense. And listening to you, I know this is something you really, really do yourself. It's the speaking with professionalism versus formality, that we think we need to use all the fancy words to sound more professional.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought this piece up. So I recently did an episode because what I hear all the time from people is, well, okay, this is the thing that I hear that people don't say publicly, but they tell me on surveys and behind closed doors, that their number one fear of experts and professionals, mind boggling. They don't want to sound like an idiot, which is hilarious because never would anyone ever look at them and be like, you won't sound idiotic. But where it comes from is this: if I'm thinking on my feet, if I'm in a meeting, if I'm on a panel, if I'm reacting to something happening with the room in front of me, I don't want to be caught off guard and sound like an idiot, either rambling or going off on a tangent or mixing up my words or saying the wrong thing or losing my train of thought. Any of these things, this fear is like, what if people think I'm an idiot? And
Yeah.
the reason why that's so irksome to them is because they know that they're intelligent. They don't want to be grouped into, for entrepreneurs, especially grouped into these, what we joke about as these whippersnappers on TikTok and Instagram who have just figured out how to do things in 7 to 12 seconds. And we're over here with our long-winded expertise and experience, and we know we can do it. So like, why can't we get people to pay attention? So what the default is okay, how do I bring my expertise, but how do I sound more polished and professional so I don't get grouped in with people who have only been doing this for a few months or maybe a few years? Like the depth of my experience, I want it to come out in how I communicate. And the mistake that a lot of people make that you're mentioning here around professionalism is they confuse that with formality. And what I mean by that is, we all know this if we worked in corporate. I did a long time in corporate. I know this, using a lot of big jargon, talking about like matrixed organizations and the business objectives. And I mean, those aren't really very big words, but you know where I'm going with it. Using a lot of language like henceforth, or think about how we write very professionally written emails. I would argue it's not about being professional, but you just use jargony, very formal emails of per my last email, and just language like that, that we would never normally say when talking to real humans. What I like to tell people is professionalism is about showing a deep, profound respect for the person that you're talking to. And part of that is speaking in language that other people can understand and ensuring that you're creating space for a conversation. So professionalism isn't about using big fancy words. I would argue formality can hinder professionalism because most people will not raise their hand to say, I don't actually know what the heck you're trying to say. So they'll just smile politely and then go move on to something else. I think this one big risk for anyone listening right now who does any kind of communication in their world or even thinks like, hey, I'm actually really comfortable speaking to groups. The biggest risk we face isn't that people say we're bad communicators, or isn't that people don't give us praise, or even that we're not bad at it. We're great in front of groups. The biggest risk is that people don't actually give us any feedback at all. They
Mm.
just move on and go learn from someone else.
Yeah.
And that's the thing we have to really get clear at is it isn't about just being comfortable in front of a group. It isn't even about being articulate in front of a group. Is the objective being met? And that goes back to the very first thing we talked about, which what was your goal? Are you
Yeah.
trying like you're trying to help people, but are you trying to move your business forward? Are you trying to grow your audience? What's the goal and are we actually meeting our business objectives?
Yeah. And it just from a personal perspective, being, English as a second language, coming to the US, working in advertising at the time. I mean, my language wasn't good enough for the fancy words.
Yes.
So it was kind of twofold. I mean, part of me freaked out because I didn't know the words. So I had to be very basic. But I think it has helped me throughout my life too, because it's like, well, I'm sorry. I am, this is not my first language. Sometimes I come up with my own words, and that's just the way it is. So I think the older I get, it's kind of helping me more. I don't have to pretend that I know all these
Yeah.
fanciness because
And people don't really care about the word flubs or the mistakes. It's just not a thing. They actually care they actually care, do you care?
Yeah.
That's more of what it's like is do you care? Do you care about me being present with you, the conversation? I'll
yeah,
also add, you mentioned accents, something you didn't ask me to talk about, but I'd love to hit this for a moment because I always get comments on my YouTube videos when I talk about delivery skills from people saying, "Hey, how do I like navigate my accent on stage?" Or how do I have a hard time holding attention, like anything around that. And what I always share with people is don't worry about trying to change your accent. It's not about that, but it's understanding enunciation so that people can follow it.
yeah,
So here's a little side tangent here. So one of the unique things about me is I have a hearing loss and I wear hearing aids. I've worn hearing aids. It's the only way I can function and have conversations with people. I've worn them now for 15 years. But my hearing, I lost it in my early 20s. So for me, hearing is very, very, I mean, it's critical to what I do, right? But I'm very aware of when other people speak, can I actually follow the conversation? And the thing that I have to be careful of is if you have an accent, what's actually happening for other people who might not be as familiar with the way that you speak, i.e., let's say you speak to people like in America, right, who we have our own particular way of speaking, and let's say you have a different accent, our brains aren't necessarily wired to understand the recognition of the words as you pronounce them. So I don't know anything about the neuroscience behind this. I just know for me, as somebody with a hearing loss, here's how it goes. You hear actually in your brain. So your brain is what processes sounds. And so my brain is used to hearing sounds in certain ways, but my ears have stopped working. Therefore, the parts of my brain that process sound are like, we don't know what that is. So what happens is when I hear somebody who has a thick accent, my brain is like, I can't compute that. I don't actually know what the word is because it can't process it. So I need people to speak a little slower and just enunciate so that my brain can catch up. Yeah, it's very fascinating as I've learned a lot more about my hearing and about accents and about volume in general. But for the most part, if you have an accent, it's not necessarily about the accent being a challenge. It's two things. It's the enunciation and the volume. Those two things, if you can work on that, you will have no problem with people being able to understand you.
Wait, so you can't say you don't understand me.
No, but now it's that's pretty cool because I have English as my first language,
Yeah,
and sometimes I'm not that great up until now
yeah,
to speak. So
yeah.
it's cool.
I think it's the fear, as you said, it's the fear of sounding stupid or the
Yeah.
fear of not being seen as professional.
Or
I
if
think
you
we
say
need
words
to-
that are a little bit more fancy words,
yeah,
your audience is not going to understand you. You
yeah,
sound fancy,
exactly.
but
It just goes, other,
I
yeah.
have to Google it. Like,
Yeah.
wait, pause it. What'd you say?
And I want to also go back to something you said with the communication skills, how we deliver, because both you and I, we have that in common that we often refer to a study that was done, I think it was the 70s or something, about first impressions and how it's 55% based on how you show up, your body language, how you look. 38 is the tone of your voice, and only 7% is the actual content of your words. So let's get into the whole delivery portion of
Yeah.
speaking.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that study, by the way, for anyone referencing, it was done in the 1970s in a university in Southern California by a man named Dr. Mel Mahabrian, I think is how you pronounce his name. And that study has since been debunked by other things. But here's the thing. I still refer to it all the time from this one, like, even if it was partially accurate, that still gives us the ability to pay attention to our delivery skills. That study was done with language that was emotionally backed, which I think most communication that we do has emotion in it.
Yeah.
So I reference it all the time. But yeah, our delivery skills, particularly our body language and our tonality in our words, that is far more important than having the fancy word or saying it right. In fact, if you listen back probably to this recording, you'll hear my word flubs. You'll hear my little mistake things. I purposely, well, I guess it's not really purposely. I don't worry about not sounding smart anymore. I used to, but I don't worry about it. Sometimes I change my mind halfway through a sentence. I don't remember where I was going, but I don't worry about it anymore. At the end of the day, I know my message. I know what I'm talking about, but the way that I deliver it, I know that's what portrays confidence. I know what that makes people feel a certain way of how I speak. They get excited. They're like, oh, that makes sense. I know that the way I speak is going to carry me from being technically imperfect with my words.
Yeah, that's great. I love, so important. And I talk about the visual aspect too. How you show up is it's woven into that too, and very important too. Because we all, when we introduce ourselves to people, we don't pay attention to their names, right? Sometimes we forget that before we even walked away because we were so
I like
enamored
names.
with what we were
I
looking
really
at.
hard.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a nice trait to remember names. I'm terrible. I got to get better at that. Oh well. Oh well. Something we all had to work on. So as we wrap it up, there's so many good nuggets, and I feel like we can really dig deeper, but we'll save that for the next time you come on, right? But as the speaking coach, any like action items you'd like to give, or last tips to think about when getting out there on stages or delivering your message?
Yeah, so I'll share with you quickly I have something called my magnetic talk formula, and it is my 4-point checklist that I use every time I get on a stage. It's the same. It's the whole thing I've based my entire program and all of my coaching on, and it's very, very simple. But what I find, it's similar to what we talked about before in the adjacent pitch. Simplicity is powerful. Simplicity is what allows us to take the complication and the excuses out of things and start taking action. So here's a very simple way for you to up level how you show up and the content in which you deliver when you speak. So the magnetic talk formula is 4 parts: purpose, structure, story, and style. Purpose, structure, story, and style. So purpose, the beautiful part is we've hit on many of these today. Purpose means, what is the goal? What am I trying to achieve by this moment with the microphone? Now, I'll give you the little bonus here. It's twofold. We mentioned earlier there was a purpose for why you are speaking, but the most powerful thing that you can do as a speaker is ask the question, what am I here for my audience?
Mhm.
Starting by asking yourself, who is in the room? How do I want them to feel? What do they already know about this topic? Where might they already be resisting that I can help alleviate for them? Our job is to meet them where they are, hence our conversation around the curse of knowledge, and help them see things in a different way so that they can get what they actually want. So, purpose, coming at it from the perspective of asking you as an expert, going, let me take off my expert hat and really think about who's in the room. The second thing we have to think about is structure. And what I mean by that is the way that you talk about your expertise, it's creating this pathway for your audience. You're opening their mind to certain things, but you're trying to help them work through their own head junk and work through their own perception of your topic when you meet them. So how you structure it matters. And there's specific formulas and there's a way that we structure information to be educational and be persuasive. But a simple tip I'll give you on this is when you speak to your audience, do not just word vomit them on a stream of conference or stream of consciousness. Do not even, if you use PowerPoint slides or Canvas slides, you don't just think of like this spew of all these slides happening. The most powerful thing that you can do is group your ideas down into sections. Very simply put, you have like section 1, section 2, section 3. And I teach people how to create signature talks, and there's 5 sections that goes into that. But very simply put, if you just put 3 bullet points down on a Post-it note before you go live, so you can say, okay, here's my mission of what I want to talk about. It just gives you that safety net so that you can guide your audience towards where you want. Going to the third piece in story. Story is the most powerful way for you to capture attention and help elicit intentional emotion of your audience. Not in a schmucky way, but in a powerful way to help them feel that what you're talking about is possible and relevant to them. So using story, your own story, it's a great way to use credibility. Using analogies helps with the click and light bulb moments. Any kind of story that you can add in. It doesn't have to be long and it doesn't have to be big and sad, just relevant. That's the like name of the game. And then lastly, in style, what I mean by that was what we were just talking about in your delivery skills. Style is both being authentic to you of how you show up, what you do, Christina, what you wear, how you carry yourself, your whole visual branding, but also the word voice or word tones that you use, the word choices. For me, I'm a little casual and I'm a little spunky and spicy when I speak. So I have a certain vocabulary that I use. I say things like, for somebody going to book a stage, I'm like, just go lose your stage virginity already. Just get it over so we can get to the good part where we have fun and learn how to make you really good on stage. Like, don't be so precious with that first stage moment. That's part of my coaching style. I make people not make it so serious. If that is offensive to you, I'm probably not your coach. So I bring my vocabulary and my humor into how I speak on stages so that I can attract my person. And the same thing is with my delivery skills. I talk fast, but you notice I vary my voice up and down a lot. I'm also very expressive with my face and my hands. I have a very performance way of communicating. It's a full body experience with me. And part of that comes from my hearing loss and how I communicate. I use the full body because when I read others, I read through their body language and their facial expression. So I rely on that. But each person has their own way of communicating. The more truthful you are when you're on a stage, the more impactful you can be for your ideal person, which your introduction of me, of the way that I speak and the authenticity, that is the best compliment you could have given me today, because that's what everybody needs to do. And while it's not about them trying to be like me, right? Oh, Heather said I should be more expressive. I should say, pop your stage cherry. No, don't say that if that's not for you, right? What you want to do is not try to parrot your mentors. What you need to do is figure out the most genuine, authentic, and effective version of how you communicate and do that on repeat.
So good. I was going to say mic drop, but I don't want to drop.
Yes, no.
These mics are expensive. Don't do that.
Purpose, structure, story, style.
Yeah.
Bam.
Yeah. And when you have all those, the goal is, and this is the whole goal for everything, we hit off on this, is how do you find more stages? Well, the goal is that you are so magnetic in the way that you communicate that you actually don't have to chase stages. You don't have to do the adjacent pitch. You don't have to go after them because they come to you. And that is the best form of flattery, and also the best way to grow is when it's coming from referrals and people seeking you out. So that is the goal for most business owners, but also as professionals. When you know how to communicate and you do it with intention, opportunities become available for you.
Yeah, that's just what Danielle talked about, the other alignment and intention. It all goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
Well, that's so well. Thank you, Heather. I mean, this has been fantastic. If you heard scratching noises, we don't have animals here. It's us taking notes.
Yeah.
So please tell everyone, Heather, if you have something coming up, where can they meet? Where can they find you, connect with you, work with you?
Yeah. Well, do we know? I didn't ask you this to start. Depending on when this is going live, I have a fun thing coming up here in the month of March. I'm doing a private podcast series called Becoming the Known Authority, where I'm doing a four to five part. There's a bonus episode that's coming, so I'll just tell y'all right now. But it's a podcast series that has some behind the scenes around what it really takes to become that known authority on stages. And I'm going to be hosting some free coaching events on Zoom to help people really nail their messaging. If by chance you listen to this at a time where that's not happening right now, the best place to go to get started with becoming a more magnetic speaker is my website, thespeakerco.com/start. That's where I keep the latest of what's happening. So if I have any challenges, free trainings, I have a free download called the Magnetic Talk freebie, where I give you 19 phrases that you can swipe from me around what to say when you do go on stage to get people to want to work with you. So all those things, you can get the latest at thespeakerco.com/start.
That's great. Yeah, and we'll have links in the show notes for all of this too. Thank you, my friend.
You're
This
so
has
welcome.
been fantastic. And yeah, don't be surprised if we ask you to come back.
All right. I'm forwardly saying yes. So see, I didn't even have to pitch that. Is that not the most magnetic thing ever?
That's how it works right there.
We should have done an adjacent pitch. See if she said,
Yes.
"Oh, I know someone."
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll work on that.
Yeah.
So we always do a little cling of our glasses at the end. So Heather, thank you so much. And until next time, cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.